This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today is Monday, February 26, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. You can find me on X at CorsiJerome1, altogether, CorsiJerome, the number 1, all lowercase. And on Substack, you can find me at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Our first story today, I think, is extremely important. The New York Times did an expose over the weekend, and this is very interesting because they're exposing that the CIA has been operative secretly. On Sunday, the New York Times published an extensive and very belated full admission that the U.S. intelligence has not only been instrumental in Ukrainian wartime decision-making, but it's established and financed high-tech command and control spy centers, and it's been doing it going back to 2014, the Maidan rebellion, which overthrew Yanukovych, who was a duly elected president of Ukraine who was favorable to Russia. So it goes through 3 different presidents. Now, evidently, the CIA and the State Department did not give all this information to Donald Trump. They walked around Donald Trump because they knew he wouldn't approve of it. So we've had a rogue CIA and State Department going back now to 2014, when together with George Soros, our State Department pulled off a color revolution in Ukraine and deposed the duly elected president of the country. Now, this is extremely important. The agency, the CIA, secretly trained and equipped Ukrainian intelligence officers spanning back to the 2014 Maidan coup, as well as constructing a network of 12 secret bases along the Russian border, which began 8 years ago. The intelligence bases from which the Russian commander communications can be swept up and Russian spy satellites monitored are being used to launch and track cross-border drone and missile attacks on Russian territory. That means we're actually at war with Russia right now. Of course, our government hasn't bothered telling us about this, because we're having spy missions attacking Russia from the CIA. So clearly, that this story is coming out. Washington has decided that they have to let the world know about this. Now, why? Now, what I think is happening is that this has a lot to do with Tucker's interview, because what happened is Medvedev has been reaching out, back channeling, trying to get word past our corporate CIA-controlled media, which has been lying to the American people since 1963. I'm going to have a book coming out next month. It's just finished now. It's just finished typesetting on the Kennedy assassination. It's going to shake the nation. And what we're seeing here is Medvedev has been trying to get communication. He was given 2 distinct messages that were around the time when Tucker Carlson had his interview with Putin. And what they did in that interview is they set it up so that Putin was saying Russia does not intend or have any interest in attacking and expanding into Eastern Europe. But NATO is being pushed right to the border of Russia. And again, this is extremely threatening to Russia's national security interests as a superpower, as a state. We have buffer zones. Every major state has their area of influence. Ours traditionally has been South America and Canada, the Western Hemisphere. That's why we, in the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, objected to Khrushchev putting missiles in Cuba, nuclear weapons in Cuba. That's what caused the Cuban Missile Crisis. And yet, we have been launching drone attacks, monitoring with intelligence activities right on the border. Now, why is this important? What's important because what Medvedev is saying, and Russia must have intelligence, saying that if NATO goes to war with Russia, we will have nuclear war. we'll have World War III. And I've been broadcasting on this channel, thetruthcentral.com, for a couple of weeks now, saying that I think the October surprise to cancel the election in 2024, maybe the CIA and the State Department, the Pentagon have decided we'll just have a little nuclear war with Russia. I was before the Mueller special prosecutors for 40 hours in 2018. I didn't have a contact. They said I was lying. They were threatening to put me before a jury in Washington that would put me away for the rest of my life, certainly find me guilty because they hate Trump. Not because I was guilty, but because they hate Trump. That we got political justice now in this country. We have KGB. This is ridiculous. And so I refused to take their plea deal. They never indicted me. They were the liars. I closed down the Russian collusion investigation, Mueller, because they thought I was the link between Roger Stone and Assange. I wasn't. I did some emails which made it sound like I had inside information, but I just figured it out on my own, that Putin was not involved in stealing the emails. It was an inside job in the Democratic National Committee. The Russians did not get the emails. They did not give them to Assange. Assange got them from an inside source in the Democratic National Committee. Hillary Clinton made up the entire Russian collusion to hide the fact that she had a secret, to hide what was the content of the secret email server that she had in her house when she was Secretary of State. That's completely outside the protocol. And yet, Huma Abedin, her assistant, was posting those emails on her Yahoo account, Huma Abedin's Yahoo account, so anybody could read classified intelligence from the of Huma Abedin's Yahoo account. And all that was hidden with this breach of intelligence from within the Democratic Party that caused the Russiagate to be the excuse that Hillary concocted. Now, if you remember the impeachment trial for Donald Trump, the impeachment trial over Ukraine, we had State Department official after State Department official coming and saying how the policy of the U.S. government was to get Ukraine into NATO and to get Finland into NATO. This is absolutely violating Russia's access to the Atlantic, to the Baltic Sea through Finland, and to the Black Sea and Mediterranean through Ukraine. And what Russia is saying is if NATO continues this and continues ramping up the Kiev more weapons or stealing more weapons, I mean, this is a huge payday for the arms manufacturers in the United States and the arms dealers worldwide. We're getting rid of all this old ordnance. We left that pile of ordnance in Afghanistan when we abandoned it. And Ukraine is being used by our government as a money laundering state. And the State Department and CIA don't want to give it up. They want to push NATO down the throat of Putin. And Putin's not going to take it. Nor would we if it was Russia doing this to us through Cuba again, or through Venezuela or any other Latin American country, or through Canada. These nation states have territorial interests which have to be, in geopolitics, respected. Now, the other stories I'm covering all make me concerned again that what Medvedev is saying is likely to happen. Gingrich is out with an article, and this is actually kind of shocking over the weekend, where he is saying that we've got to take nuclear war seriously. I haven't seen talk like this since the 1950s. So Gingrich is saying that we are now finding that countries are getting nuclear weapons, in particular worried about Iran and North Korea as rogue states that are unstable and may use nuclear weapons once they have them fully developed. And again, we forget, like in the 1950s and 60s, Herman Kahn's classic study, Thinking About the Unthinkable. He was a strategist who made it clear how dangerous a nuclear attack would be. And there were novels 70 years ago, Philip Wiley's novel Tomorrow. All these works are largely forgotten today. And Russia has brought tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus. There are stories, Zero Hedge was covering it last week, that we're evidently sending nuclear warheads to the UK. And if we have a crash program here that we're announcing, letting the world know that we've done this spy system bases right on the edge of Russia and Ukraine, Russia's about to make this public to the world, is my guess. And our intelligence agency is about to be shown as acting completely outside the control of the civilian authorities of the United States. Certainly when Trump was president, this information was withheld from Trump. They're admitting that now. And it's very dangerous when our intelligence agencies, our Pentagon, go woke and go leftist and go anti-Russian. This has got to stop. If it doesn't stop, we will have nuclear war. And if Gingrich is out there warning about it, there's enough intelligence here which indicates to me that at a below the surface level, our intelligence agencies have freaked out because they know Russia's about to release the whole story. So another story today which convinces me that this is actually what's going on is this story. It is in Gold, Goats, and Guns by Tom Lungo, who's reporting that at the security conference in Munich, and this was just a few days ago, it was revealed that the real purpose of all this hysteria over Ukraine funding is because the EU wants to issue war euro bonds. Now, that's pretty startling. 110 billion in euro bonds the EU Commission wants to spend on arming Europe for future war against Russia and supporting Ukraine. More war. And this buttresses what Medvedev has been saying, that the war drums are beating within the EU Commission. Now, again, this is all clearly the hard left, which controls, the State Department, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, and the CIA. All of these military-industrial complex agencies have gone neo-Marxist and woke. They want to destroy the United States, and they're depopulationists. So what they want is a war with Europe, because they can't let Donald Trump be president again. So the idea is here that if we had just a nuclear war in the run-up to the election, say in September, October, we reignite COVID, and there's stories coming out of China that there's another wave of serious COVID infections. And then we have the tensions rise between the United States and Russia over Ukraine, and we just have a little nuclear war. And then we cancel the election. I think that's the October surprise. And I want to broadcast that out because I see, and I have no inside information this is true. I have no source that has told me this. I do know for a fact that Medvedev is back channeling, and I know that's in fact going on. That's how Tucker Carlson got to Moscow to do the interview. That was a good long time in the making. And there were many people who knew it was going on and in the making. And that was because Putin and Medvedev had a message that they wanted to send to the world. And that message was, your side, the CIA behind it, are planning to foster a nuclear war with Russia by going to war with Russia through Ukraine, with the United States now admitting in the New York Times this weekend, on a Sunday story, which is, again, a little bit under the radar because it's not covered during the weekdays when the mainstream media should be paying attention. But the mainstream media has been completely AWOL, gone on this story because you're not getting news. You're getting censored news. And the censored news is out there to allow the CIA and the Pentagon to go to war with Russia without anybody realizing that's what's behind the whole scene. And the EU is extremely weak. It can't have the power to tax. The EU is at risk of breaking up. Many of the countries now are deindustrializing, like Germany, because of the insane global warming nonsense, which has caused Germany to shut down its nuclear power plants. Cost of energy is skyrocketing. The amount of debt in the world, both personal debt, with our credit card debt now hitting $1 trillion, and with the debt on the U.S. national debt, the debt service, the interest payments being $1 trillion a year, and our national debt accelerating at a very, very rapid and frightening rate. It's going to go to $34 trillion in rapid speed. And so therefore the EU bonds, which, by the way, when they were issued during COVID, a lot of losses were taken on it. But these bonds that they're talking about now are for the EU to rearm. Okay, so Tom Lungo is saying the Eurobonds are the holy grail for European integration because they think if they get Eurobonds, they will be on the way to making their central bank of the EU override the state central banks and ultimately take the power of taxation away from these member countries and put it into the EU itself. What's at stake is that the globalists are at risk of being exposed. They are at risk of being destroyed. And they're going to try to put in the totalitarian state before anybody has a chance to react against them. I want to cover a couple more stories today. The story on the economics. What we're finding is that the American middle class is today getting decimated. A compilation was put together by various sources trying to look at the distribution of household wealth. And what's clear is that the share of wealth held by the richest 1% is currently at its peak. Okay, that with households having a lot of additional capital at the very top. Okay, and the very bottom is also increasing in its share. So this redistribution of money, the agenda of the socialists is redistributing more and more money through all the money being given to the new immigrants who are packed in hotels, probably about 10 million new people from south of the border coming to the United States. And so the bottom 50% have actually increased their share about 10% between the years 2020 and 2022. But the middle class is the class that is really getting hurt. So as the share of the wealth goes to the corporate equities, the mutual funds, the owners, the managers of businesses, their total wealth has grown from 9% to 14% from between 2020 and 2023. And what we're having is in the 50, the bracket that is the middle class bracket, the households in the lower middle and middle classes, has seen a lot of its assets dissipate. So its percentage of the wealth is minimizing, it's shrinking. And this is frightening because a society which squeezes the middle class becomes unstable. And the Democrats are destabilizing America, both with an insane ideology, this woke ideology, and with the economics, the way intentionally the Federal Reserve is just printing money, increasing our debt to massive levels, and creating a situation in which we're going to have a global crash. And I've been predicting this for some time. They're going to try to hold it off until after the election. I'm not sure they're going to succeed. So get a copy of this free book from Swiss America. This free book, Chris will put it up here in a minute. It's how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. You get it. I wrote it with Dean Heskin. Call toll-free Swiss America 1-800-519-6268. That's the number again. I'm going to repeat it, 1-800-519-6268. Get a copy of this book. I really review the previous declines of the economy, going back to Jimmy Carter when he was president, and then 2008, 2009, when we had the subprime real estate market meltdown. And both times, the price of gold doubled. I'm saying it's going to double again. Gold's been trading consistently over $2,000 an ounce. That's breaking a technical support level, which is very important because it indicates the gold's headed to a much higher price. And I think you're going to find increasingly that the powers that be are not going to be able to control and suppress the price of gold by international transactions in London, where the central banks try to suppress the demand for gold and they manipulate the market. But the point here is that Europe is ramping up for war. The middle class of the United States is getting squeezed. We're in for a classic crash of historic proportions. Okay, now another story that caught my attention today was San Francisco again, where a hardware store, one of the San Francisco's hardware stores, which is well known, is now taking customers to be accompanied by an employee while shopping in order to combat shoplifting. So the store has implemented a policy of serving customers one at a time during specific hours and has restricted access to parts of the store, creating a designated waiting area for shoppers until they can be assisted. Now, again, this is because of the massive amount of shoplifting going on in San Francisco. And our cities are deteriorating rapidly. The Democratic control is going to make our cities look like ghost towns. And people are abandoning the cities. It's only going to get worse. As the crime in New York City escalates, San Francisco, we're already seeing failures in commercial real estate because the commercial real estate is largely unoccupied, up to 30 to 40%. People have not returned back to work. The streets are not safe with the amount of homelessness and drugs. The Democrats are allowing drugs. The Democrats have released people from prison, and they're not prosecuting for crimes. They're excusing for crimes. So the criminals are in charge of these cities. And the Democrats that are running these cities are running them into the ground. It's happening across the country. Denver, beautiful cities that we once had. Chicago. Chicago is a total mess. San Francisco is a beautiful city, and it's a complete mess right now. And real estate values will deteriorate. Stores downtown close. Portland, Oregon has the downtown almost closed entirely because of the violence. And the left is out of control. They have this insane woke gender insecurity. What gender are you? When people can't eat, they're not going to care what gender you are or your insistence that you want a certain set of pronouns put together. If we see the middle class squeezed and people are feeling the economic pain of a major decline and your dollar is losing purchasing power rapidly, what a dollar will buy today, just take $100 to the store and see how little you can get. Buy 3 bags of groceries, you got a $300 bill. Go out to dinner. Family of 4, you can have a $150 bill. And it's not the most fancy restaurant in town. And finally, our green agenda. I'm seeing here a story that we're increasingly having a whole set of investment bankers and major banks pulling out of the ESG because the lawyers are organizing and suing ESG companies. And about time is all I have to say. America's largest investment banks are fleeing a left-wing climate coalition, which is the Climate Action 100 network, which was trying to get a group of companies, investments like JP Morgan Chase, BlackRock, State Street, they've all dropped out of this climate action. And this exit has come as a group of Republican attorney generals are wrapping up a years-long investigation and preparing to file a major antitrust lawsuit against this left-wing climate network and its investment bank members, according to the Washington Free Beacon, saying that this ESG is not favorable to investors. In other words, the people who are holding mutual funds, etc., are taking losses because this ESG, this energy coalition to invest in green companies, the environmental, social, and governance, ESG. The left always comes up with these terms, the ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Okay, in other words, they want rules set for investing according to how much this company invests in green energy projects. Green energy projects are dying all over the world. Once the federal subsidies, the governments quit supporting wind and solar, they die. It's going to be cylinder all over again. We're going to have tons of junk solar panels and wind turbines that rot in the field because the technology doesn't work. And the left knows it doesn't work. You see, the left is trying to destroy America. We've got here really a spiritual battle in which the left is waging war against the United States and attempting to usher in their new utopian Marxist era where the transhumans the Bill Gateses of the world could merge themselves with computers and become superhuman. It's a lie, it's nonsense, and it's doomed to crash. In sum, I want people to be aware, and the Truth Central is not here necessarily to reassure you, but to warn you that this is going to be a very, very rough year. The economics are going to be extremely rough. The politics are. I think we're seeing the potential of nuclear war never being this high. I can imagine nuclear war happening this year for the first time in my lifetime. I think it's something that has to be taken very seriously. Like a massive crash in which central banks across the world fail, which the dollar fails, which the BRICS nations are organizing to oppose the dollar, where Russia has been pushed into an alliance with China and Iran, where Iran is funding any number of terrorist organizations in the Middle East, and we've got a regional war with Israel going against Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, various Iranian Guard units who are attacking U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthi rebels who continue to disrupt commercial traffic in the Red Sea. And it looks like the Ukrainian war, Russia has established firm holds on Donbass and Donetsk, the two regions in the eastern Russia, which Russia has said should be independent states. Russia has firm control of that portion, the eastern portion of the Black Sea and Crimea. Russia is not giving up this territory. The only solution is to get a settlement in which Russia's national state interests are recognized and we quit trying to expand NATO. I think NATO should be disbanded. I think the EU should be broken up. I think the woke should be driven out of the universities. This is the only sense we have. Chris, do you want to make a comment on this, and we'll wrap the story up today? It's been a lot of intense subjects we've covered.
Oh, I'm sure people watching this are thinking, wait a minute, everything's great if you listen to Joe Biden talk about a booming economy and how all the jobs are coming back and everything else.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's absolutely a joke.
And this guy, he's considered to be too much in dementia to be prosecuted by the special prosecutor for his obvious violations of national security with how he handled classified documents going back to vice president. He can't remember important dates in his life, like when his son died. He can barely remember who he is. He's president of the United States. Well, that makes sense, certainly.
Oh, yeah. Again, the slogan for the Democrats in 2024 and probably the future moving forward, vote Democrat because competence is overrated.
There you go.
That's their slogan, because competence is overrated.
There are others. Woke is broken. We intend to break you.
There we go. And about this ESG thing, banks are finally running away from this because they thought they could get social credit from the government by going into this, but they forgot, since they're a fiduciary, and anybody involved with other people's investments is in fact a fiduciary, or they should be. They don't realize they didn't realize at the time they had to help and do what's best for their clients, do what's best for their investors, rather than what some kind of crazy climate nut tells them to do, who happens to be sitting on an unelected committee in the government.
Well, let's wrap it up, Chris. This has been an insane period of time. I mean, you're right. Okay.
I think I broke everything.
Broke is woke. Okay. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. We're suffering the judgment of God because we've allowed God to come out of our lives. We've allowed, since Roe v. Wade, millions of babies to be cut apart in the womb. The Republicans want to run on the rights of a woman to choose, which means more abortion. They want abortion up to late-term abortion so they can harvest the organs of these babies. It's insanity. Listen to Harari, there's Noah Harari, this Israeli, who is one of the major spokesmen, although they want to deny it now at the World Economic Forum, because their agenda's out. The American people in the world are saying this anti-globalist coalition is building. People are rejecting globalism because we don't want to be slaves. They think we're useless. And that's fundamentally because they have no belief in God. They don't see the dignity of human beings, and they don't see the dignity of life. It's satanic. Satan hates God. Satan hates the life that only God can create. We will win here, and I encourage you to join me in the solution the Bible offers, which is 2 Chronicles 7:14. We've got to get on our knees and ask God to forgive us our sins, forgive us for taking God out of the schools, out of our hearts, going back to the 1940s, lying, disinformation, censorship. This is silencing God. The persecution of Christians globally has never been as high. These look like final days, and certainly they are, because we're in a final battle with Satan. In the end, God will win. And if enough of us come back into revival, which begins with repentance, 2 Chronicles 7:11 says God will hear our prayer and heal our land. God did not create the human race, did not create this experience that we call reality for it to be won over by Satan. Satan will lose again, as Satan has always lost. But we must do our part. And it starts with awareness. It starts with getting the truth out. That's why this is thetruthcentral.com. We're going to continue broadcasting every weekday and bringing you the truth. Thank you for joining us. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today, it's Monday. It's February 26, 2024. We'll be back tomorrow and every weekday with a new podcast. God bless.